Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reacts where today we have ourselves an EP from an act named Passive the Rapper titled 4passive Forever. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the EP on SoundCloud. We have the art for the EP on the screen. Starting with before we begin, I should note that I have reviewed quite a bit of Passive's music in the past, and I've enjoyed my time with it for the most part, so it'll be good to hear more. We're going to listen through this EP from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Starting with before we begin, let's go.
Crayola for eyes, makeshift beginnings of a wonderful life. I used to think the water was warm until I jumped in and tried to warm my baby. Yesterday was a bad one, and I'm trying not to get caught up in daydreams. This insane world saved me. Damn, everybody crazy. Little heathens rocking Gucci.
Interesting production on those drums.
The big homie got a face tag. My baby mama give me Gucci. She got her feet up on the dash. Ain't no sympathy for weakness. Everybody get a bag. Go to blows over secrets. Sometimes feelings don't pass. Lil' heathens rockin' Gucci. The big homie got a face tag. My baby mama give me Gucci. She got her feet up on the dash. Ain't no sympathy for weakness. Everybody get a bag. Go to blows over secrets. Sometimes feelings don't last.
It's just it's a somber theme, a really somber musical theme in the background, but I kind of dig how it works with the lyrics so far. It's an interesting combination of elements.
Out the window in the Sagaway. In my head it's been a cold one. I got angry at you so much. God, I just don't wanna feel nothing. Only therapy's a pill bottle. I've been sleeping just to pass time. I've been drinking when I wake up. You don't want me, I don't give a damn. I've been lonely on my own again. Giving pussy just to call him my friend. Feeling weak, but I'm playing pretend. Trying to get us so I'm still in my head. They don't get my problem. I'm a little heathen, just a bad bitch. Broken heart for a face tag. Gave him Gucci in the backseat. Still lonely, he don't love me. So I'm running in my brain. I still party on the weekend. Ain't no dime in my backpack. I don't really wanna be here. 'Cause I'm just a heathen. I wish I stopped breathing. 'Cause I'm just a heathen. I'm just a heathen.
A little bit of that kind of gritty DI fuzz on the guitars as well. Interesting start to proceedings. So before we begin track number one, I think it's about sort of setting the scene, looking at the people around us, the relationship we have with our baby mama, our feelings of self-worth, trying to have friends, and maybe those not following through, struggling to sort of cope with simply surviving, dealing with, suppose, being ourselves and being an adult. We talk about how everybody's crazy and the world around us is sort of like overwhelming and everything like that. So I think it's about trying to cope with our reality, what we're surrounded by, our interactions with those close to us. We have the male perspective, I assume, is Passive to begin with. And then we have a lady coming in who maybe was the lady that Passive was talking about with their sort of angle on it. And it almost seems like they might have separate viewpoints, but they are sort of intrinsically entwined, you know, that there's that sense of connection there in a way. I think the vocal performance with that sort of there's a little bit of there's an effects change in each of the vocals. There was some sort of like tuning or something like that, and I dig the style of it. I think it works for that sort of kind of contemporary hip hop and rap culture. But it also makes it a little bit more melodic, and it doesn't overshadow the expression of it. Like you can tell that we're almost in a near melancholic, bittersweet state with the predicament that we are in. There is a bit of angst and tension there, but it's almost like we've kind of accepted just how crazy stuff is. It's just a part of life. We're just trying to get through it. And I think that kind of that mood, that vibe is a difficult thing to articulate, maybe unless you've gone through it. And I kind of dig the fact that we have that sense of realism within the performance from both sides, that it was sort of consistent throughout. We have that guitar in the background there with those interesting extensions there, the kind of lo-fi, gritty kind of single chord tone there with a little bit of scratchiness that's playing some chords that don't necessarily want to resolve to anything. They're pretty sounding chords. They're sweet. There's a sense of beauty to them, but it illustrates almost a sadness, especially when compared to a lot of the elements going around on top. And the guitars float in the mix. There is occasional bass, like in the midsection there, and there are drums as well. And there's a really interesting sound to the drums from a production perspective, which almost makes the simplicity, the minimalism of the percussive layers in terms of how they actually played, all the more sort of like potent. It's just a way for us to move almost like a slow shuffle forward, and it's kind of fascinating. And I dig the fact that we aren't trying to overwhelm the listener this early into the EP. We're getting a feel for what's involved, before we begin. I think that thematically the track works in terms of, again, the bittersweet nature of the chords there, the complexity, the emotionality matches a lot of what's going on with the vocal expression there. You're put in a position where you pay close attention to the vocals because of how it loops there, because that's where a lot of the variety is. And I just think that it's smart there. I didn't think we need to overcolor it. Things are connected. At 3 minutes 17, there's no filler within it. You get two sides of the coin, male and female perspective on that, which is kind of dope. And it's just the studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering. And it's got kind of like a sense of, it's like a raw tape. You can tell they've deliberately polished things again, like those effects chains on the drums there with those reverb tails and such. They're kind of like the emptiness that they suggest there with the more straightforward tone of the guitars. There's an interesting contrast there with the vocals from both people on top, nice and present in the mix, with really adequate leveling and filtering and sort of like limiting. And I suppose this will be the one time I talk about the production with these tracks, unless there's something else that kind of piques my interest, because a lot of the production stuff is usually consistent across an EP. But for this opening track, I'm very, very happy with that too. But we've now got track 1. Beautiful keys, man.
Yeah, this is what troubles me. People with confidence not being good as they think. Constant monotony. I feel like I'm always refilling the tank. I'm drained, y'all taking it out of me. Thanks. No, really, no thanks. I needed to rest. Shit fell in your face. I woke up and jumped in the race. So I'm gone. I bet you probably still tripping. Go ahead and stick to your mission. Meanwhile, the audio crisp, the player's still there, but the visual different. Homicidal with my intuition. In the past, if the rapper go missing, I promise I've never been missing the vision. You fell for the bait.
Homicidal with my intuition, like the wordplay. The flow is fantastic. And the panning as well is beautiful. Are we having reverse takes here? Oh. No, that was really tight. That was really good. Okay, so track 1, I think, is about someone who is looking at the others around them, and they talk about what's on their mind, people who are confident without having anything to back it up. You know, they watch them fall on their face, they fell for the bait, etc. It seems like it's an us against them situation where they're tiring us out and we're sort of like just trying to do our own thing, and they're now doing their own thing, but they're sort of failing at it. And I think the second chorus is kind of discussing how almost like the way people behave, like they never really left high school maybe, and how they're still trying to grow up, and we have to eventually take it seriously. But it's almost like we were a cool kid once, in the sense that I don't know how to take that one. Are we saying that we were cool because we didn't give a fuck, but now we do? And then therefore that sort of makes us more real. And the first one is sort of commenting on people who still aren't sort of taking it seriously and who are sort of like kind of rolling around. What I like about this track, if I have understood the story correctly, and apologies if I haven't, I think that the vocal takes, the way that they're done with all those overdubs, it wasn't just the fact that the rap flow in that first verse there was really solid. It was straight to the point. The words came through clearly, easy to follow along to. It seemed like we were very comfortable and polished on the microphone. And this is part of what I've enjoyed about listening to Passive stuff. They've gone better and better over time. And I think they're really sort of finding their stride now, which is great. But just these overdubs, like these on the sides, and then that side, and the way that we kind of have them kind of feeding off or intermingling with each other separately. And at the end, I think in that chorus section, in that second half, they all come together and we're really sort of like united in the messaging that we have. It's almost like we're trying to figure stuff out in the first half, and then it all kind of clicks and is crystal clear in the second. And I appreciate the way that that's spun and handled. I think that that's all you needed. I mean, this is a 2-minute track. It's incredibly short. Very, very straight to the point. Absolutely no filler. And the way it's structured again with that rap verse section, then the sung parts, and the second with like the chanting as well, is just fantastic. It's almost through composed. And you have the kind of clicky hi-hats with the kicks and sort of like snare samples there with the drums there. We have breaks in the middle from that. We come back into it. We're very comfortable with the groove there. It's like a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4. Yeah, so it's like a slow tempo 16th note groove there, like a slow dance there. The bass, nice and sort of confident in its stride as well, reflecting on the root notes of the chord progressions. The piano in this part on the side with the right hand was gorgeous. I love the twinkle of it. Some of those extensions alongside the key parts there, like the electric keyboard. It was just a beautiful balancing of tones and textures there, with a sense of maturity because of the way things were played and the range they were, and the sense of classiness it adds to it. And there are all these kind of vocal sort of like chops and like interesting sort of like takes in midsection there. We had some sort of synths as well as maybe some string parts in those quieter parts. There was dynamic range to the track as well within the two. But it's just the way that we hold on to these sort of like held whole notes, these legato passages there in those little breaks there with the occasional vocal takes on the side there, that add a sense of atmosphere and suspense to it. It's a very pleasant sounding mix thematically. Accompaniment the actual writing of it, the theme is really beautiful. It's gorgeous. I keep saying beautiful. But it's just stuff like the actual sort of soundscaping and the environment that's facilitated through those additional layers and those quieter parts that makes it very special. And like the interesting sort of like, I suppose, reverse takes, not just from a production perspective, but also just almost it looks like we're looking back in time at how things used to be. And it's like a journey we're on mentally. But I think just in terms of the actual theme itself, it's very sort of like misty and sort of like almost a sense of solemn acceptance. There is a little bit of kind of like push and kind of brunt to it with the way that the hi-hats, the percussion and the bass are handled there. There's strength behind that. But it's almost like we're trying to balance that with the delicate nature of those key parts, the romanticism of those strings there with the way we look back on things for better or worse, the feelings, emotions, and stance shed. There's just an interesting combination of stuff here that makes it a little bit more complex than the previous track, but still equally palatable. My comments in this track regarding production are the same as the previous. I just particularly appreciate, again, those reverse takes for a little bit of sound design stuff, as well as the different sort of vocal parts on each side. They're really filling up the stereo field and making that chorus section sound huge. So on that front, it was very well done. We got track number 3, which is track 2. Really interesting theme to begin with.
Yeah, many men moving wicked ways. I don't even know why I tried. I was raised off of right and wrong. Imagine growing up black and white. Bible study on Sunday morning. Oh, look at him, he's so bright. Yeah, look at me now. I'm still trying to get this shit right. I probably need Jesus Christ. Funny, I don't even need advice. My peers are a beautiful thing, but nothing compares to paradise. I ain't never been scared of heights. I didn't lie, I wanted to fly. Side note, I don't wanna die. I gotta give it a couple of tries. Way too competitive. I got a heart of a champion, I will go out for an eye. I will go out of my way for the victory. I'm not okay when I'm getting behind. Some problems, just let them slide. Other option, and we gon' slide. If I die today, don't give me flowers, baby. Kiss me one more time.
Where do you go when you've been everywhere? And all the people you know just wanna stay right there. I will not be complacent, this is not a vacation. And for your information, no, I don't play fair.
I mean, it was just, I just love this. I love the sudden shifts to those overdub vocals on the sides there. It's fantastic, dude. And that bass.
They call the city the cathedral. Good and evil, checking on what's right.
My pivotal moment was taking the road, let's travel. Tell me how I be the brightest, but I'm still blending in with the shadows. The people that claiming they love me, I've been on a mission to prove it ain't shallow. Stocks and dividends in my portfolio, even though money don't matter. Even though money don't matter, I'll be flying till I'm 75, 76, I'ma hit me a lick. Hop in the whip, I'm spinning, I'm swerving a box. Chevy on I-26, up to the CR in this bitch. That little rap that you spit ain't shit. Me and Lil Brian in the back of your mind like, damn, you might be COVID sick.
It's just...
Yeah, props to the motherland, giving me my tan. I said that I would arrive, here I am. I don't fear no man, but they are not human, heartless. What the fuck are you?
Yeah, many men moving wicked ways. I don't even know why I tried. I was raised off of right and wrong. Imagine growing up black and white. Bible study on Sunday morning. Oh, look at him, he's so bright. Yeah, look at me now. I'm still trying to get this shit right.
Like, where do you go when you've been everywhere? And all the people you know just wanna stay right there. I will not be complacent, this is not a vacation. And for your information, no, I don't play fair. Nah, hasta la vista, adios mio, when I leave you. You know I come back home. They call the city the cathedral. Good and evil, checking on what's right and what's wrong.
I mean, that was stunning. Track 2 is an absolute banger, man. So I think that this third track, track 2, is about the journey from passive, starting out with a young sort of going to church, you know, people thinking they're looking at their ability, like either they're like academic ability or intelligence, etc., realizing like when you get into your 20s, I suppose, as an adult, that you're still trying to figure stuff out. And sometimes not knowing how to do everything can be immensely frustrating, kind of not make you feel, you know, like that. You know, it's almost like in this track we're discussing what we're going to do when we get older and the life we're going to live, and there's a sense of sort of like careful positivity about it. You get the impression that passive is looking to get to 75 and riding that Corvette around the place, and I just, you get the feeling there's a sense of hope for that, but it's also like they're kind of trying to find an equilibrium. They don't want to get complacent, they don't want to take this life for granted, they don't want to just get stuck where they are, maybe like other people that are around them. They want to continue pushing forward and make the most of the possibilities. And I gotta appreciate them, man. I know there's more nuance to it, but if that's like the kind of the main take from this, I think that's fantastic. So it's an interesting direction from the previous two. I think that in terms of the vocals, this is probably my favorite one so far. I really appreciate how slick and smooth it was from those rapped verse parts, just the use of eighths and just sort of triplets, not necessarily in triplets, but the kind of 16th, like the offbeat of the syllables and consonants and stuff like that. It's awesome. And there was constantly changing like phrasings rhythmically of the different lines within each of the stanzas, each of the verses. And it's just so easy to listen to. And there's a sense of funkiness because of how it integrates with the bass and the drum parts. And it's just glorious, man. And then we get into that chorus section where again, you have the high, the mid, and then the low octave, that phenomenal harmony there that just gives it so much life. And because it's asymmetrical in the stereo field, it's just all the more interesting. And it's so professional. Like I would happily listen to this any day of the week, man. It's great to hear their story. And I think when a musician is opening up, the most important thing can honestly be to try and make it as interesting as possible so that it's worth hearing your story. You have these kind of interesting sort of like strummed or filtered kind of guitar bits at the start there with some lowy bits, and that's like the first 12 to 15 seconds of this piece. And then suddenly it just accelerates. It just goes straight into beast mode. That bass line, that it's just such a thick sounding bass, and it's just so full of life and vigor, and like the squareness of it, the semi-abrasiveness of it, just how much it kind of wants to kick your teeth in, but in a way that's respectable. Just the way it kind of syncs itself, merges with the kit, the phrasings there, the way that the bass sort of like plays off what the vocals are doing and vice versa. Just the low end and the actual groove of it is spectacular, and you do miss those elements when they are not there, but when they reappear, that's just absolutely beloved, man. There's some interesting sort of background key parts there that are filtered, and they kind of go from like left to right, etc. And this is something in the previous track where like the instruments would travel as well that I didn't mention there. The actual panning, the automation of stuff is just sensational. And there's these sort of octave, sort of like upper layer parts, which could be vocals or could be sort of like pads or something like that. There's little bits of ear candy throughout it that keep intriguing. And allowing the bass to disappear in that interlude section at the end of the second third just leaves you with a sense of the actual tightness of the vocal flow with the percussive elements behind it. And it's such a thick, full-sounding track that you just kind of sit there and glide along with it, and you appreciate both itself being like really like well written. And it probably sounds like I'm glazing. I'm not. It's really good stuff. But the contrast with the previous two tracks and how they're done, each song feels separate, but it also feels connected at the same time. I think there's an interesting lack of harmonic resolution within this track that almost indicates to me that we are not finished, and that within itself, the way we never get to a close on the scale or key, is just smart. For that to invoke that feeling there without explicitly saying it, for that to communicate alongside the lyrics there, is just smart. And you've got the kind of grooviness, the funkiness again of how the bass and the drum rhythm elements go with the vocals in a sense of unison there, with the whole notes on the other elements throughout the track, just compositionally, that sort of rhythmic contrast there is really cool. And a lot of it is about the actual funk of it. There's like harmonies there, but they're less prominent here. We're not going for the more sort of like strong kind of triads and stuff as per some of the previous tracks, but studio production wise, fantastic. Again, I like the fact that we had those vocals as sort of united in those chorus parts, those bigger takes there. I just think it was nice to have the first 15 seconds with something a little bit more sort of like vintage and almost nostalgic there. It was kind of like a brave move to have things a little bit quieter at the start of a track, but then it invokes a sense of curiosity, and then you're rewarded by the rest. So I mean, we're at the halfway point now. Things are looking really good. We have track 3, which is the fourth.
Usually how it goes. You never say hello. Try to open doors that you prefer closed. Secondhand smoking, hand me down close. It's whatever, I stop worrying about it. Don't do me no good to be concerned about it. It's whatever, I stop worrying about it. Don't do me no good to be concerned about it. And it sucks now. Everybody done grown up and run out of fucks now. People I don't even like, got a whole side to them I don't know about. God forbid I try to make the light stop burning out. 2 wrongs made it right, man, I'm mind nocturnal. I survived 17, made it past 25. A lot of people never came back, and I think I know why. They get high, chasing horoscopes and dollar signs. Yeah, just last week I had that thing twice and then double back. I was bumping the car to 3, the beat building, I ran it back. Took me back to my pedal bike, a 6 son of a gun at that. Oh, you so old news, hating. Yeah, watching how we slip, watching how we fall, watching how we talk to that goddamn wall, watching how we exist, yeah. Life's a bitch, yeah. Tell her to give me a kiss, yeah. Watching how we should, watching how we fall, watching how we talk. A lot of people never came back, and I think I know why. They get high, chasing horoscopes and dollar signs. And it sucks now. Everybody done grown up and run out of fucks now. People I don't even like, got a whole side to them I don't know about. God forbid I try to make the light stop burning out. 2 wrongs made it right, man. I'm usually how it goes. You never said hello. Try to open doors that you prefer closed. Secondhand smoking, hand me down close.
How to interpret this one? I mean, like, I'm going to have a listen through this one again just before I talk about it, but it is an intriguing track. So this was a really kind of fascinating song for the main reason that I literally I heard it the second time and I learned more about it from that. It's a song where I absorbed it and it was a different experience. You kind of go over and it's replay value. For a 2-minute 20 track, there's actually quite a lot to take in there. I think the song is looking at maybe some problems or things or secrets or concepts that people didn't want us to sort of go into, difficulties that they were having that they didn't want us to try and fix. And we talk about people not coming back, like when from 17 through 20, making it to 25, people not coming back. So I'm wondering if that's talking about people who just either literally did not make it back because terrible things happened to them, or they just changed and there's never who they were again. Like they were just irreparably damaged by the transition to adulthood and the stuff that they had to go through. I think this is sort of more of the stuff that Passive has been discussing in previous parts where like it's been difficult to kind of go and navigate adulthood, especially with the people around you who just don't care. They've just got no fucks to give. And that's, I think that's a shared experience. Like there is stuff within this EP that I think a lot of people will be able to relate to. It is a wild world out there, and a lot of people are tired and stressed out, and we're just trying to keep the world alive. And I think there'll be people that can relate to this. In that sense, I think alone, if for nothing else, it's kind of special music. But we talk about like hand-me-down sweatshirts and t-shirts or something like that. I'm kind of wondering whether this was maybe like talking about what we got when we were like younger and like the stuff people had to do to sort of like make stuff work or something like that. I'm not sure. But either way, I think that the story is compelling. I thought that the vocals in this song, well, clearly they were different to the previous track. It was more sort of like sung stuff. There was an interesting sort of tuning to some parts there that made it a bit more sort of colorful and synthetic, but not in the way that was disingenuous. I think that stylistically it was kind of interesting how it contrasted a little bit with some of the plucked sort of like string components there. I dig the fact that we kind of allowed everything else to just be absent from our vocals at times, like in the latter half of the track there. And we had different vocal layers go over top of other ones as well to kind of have different stories being sort of like it's told at the same time there. It was an interesting sort of like counter melody or counter sort of phrasing going on there. There's a lot to take, and I like the fact that we played around with those different takes and got them to sort of like intermingle and sort of kept the track fresh developmentally without it being sort of like without allowing things to be misconstrued. But there are very pleasant melodies, and they harmonize neatly with a lot of the arpeggiated guitar parts there with the different layers. I think there might have been like a steel string and then maybe a nylon or something like that. Different takes that just had slightly different textures and tones there to allow themselves to niche more sort of like correctly on top of one another. At 2 minutes 20, this is a very short track, but it was more of sort of like, I suppose, a through composed one, technically. Maybe, I'm not sure. Like we seemed like we had several repeated sections, but it was more of a journey rather than like a traditional sort of like ABA structure. And that sort of vinyl crackle that we had throughout the track, that wasn't just a post-production effect there. We've had the vinyl effect on other songs, I think, too, but just it kind of makes you want to go back in time and imagine an earlier time, like from our childhood or something like that, a vintage kind of effect there. Just sort of like in regards to what it makes you assume it's really compelling. And there's this wonderful sort of like consistency with the percussion there. There's a fullness with the kick, snare, and hi-hat tones there. But it allows itself to become a bit more sort of like low-key when it needs to. It's absent when it needs to be in those little breaks there, because things are meant to float, and that's part of the development within itself, is allowing the percussion either be there or not, and there being big contrast because of that. And I think part of it is that bass line is just so subtle underneath, but you can still feel it when the drums are there. So you have those different guitar parts, the bass and drums in a similar way to before we begin. But what happens is, again, as I mentioned, everything just kind of like stops and you're just absorbing their message, and then it's just flush with the guitar layers next moment. Huge sound. Really pretty with the note choices and arpeggios there. It's a relatively simple bass line there with two different notes and the chords sort of feeding off each other, being sort of very similar triad or sort of like note-wise compositionally. But they're very gentle. Like there's a glow and a warmth to them, a shimmer and a sheen there, both due to the tone and the production that matches the affectation of those vocal parts. And so there's a nice connection there. And when you put those chords with the vocal parts, with the fact that we allow a lot of the more sort of like some messages in the vocals to be sort of like naked by themselves, those truths there, in a way that hasn't been done with previous parts of this EP, it is a really compelling listen. I appreciate that we're confident with our themes that we're able to sort of have ourselves on the mic alone for a bit of sort of like that truth moment. I like that we also put other parts together on top. It's just, you're making the most of that real estate, and it's handled well. Production wise, I think again, it's ironically sometimes having a bit of sort of like a hum or like a noise, like a vinyl crackle, or simply just having a bit of sort of like gain or kind of like a tone or like a sound can be a bit distracting here, but we're not going for a super like sterilized sort of really clean like pop track or something like that there, where there's not allowed to be that sort of like graininess. This is meant to sort of be a more sort of like grounded performance, and I appreciate that everything is sort of adding up like that. Production wise as well, no complaints about it, very well handled. So we've got track 4, which is the 5th for today. What are we?
That shit ain't no average.
Hang on a minute, I gotta turn the lights back on. I've got automated lights that turn off at a certain time, so I've turned them back on again.
Yeah, 10 times out of 9, I never found Nirvana, but damn if I ain't tried. They say they'll pray for me, that's a goddamn lie. I used to see the ribbon in the sky when I got high. Now I'm colorblind, yeah, the old me died. Colorblind, all I see is what you hide. I'm done code switching, that was terrible advice. Back when I was gullible, I might have wondered why. They struggle for the troublesome, but that shit by design. What I manifested, yo, you gotta respect it. Beautiful cuticles until the money collected. Still gotta protect my white collar investment. It's whatever with crit, I just gotta accept it. Look, the high road, let's try.
And the saxophone, dude.
I don't rap, I unravel based off what this life delivers. I got infinite colored pencils trying to show off the bigger picture. I went colorblind and still can't tell the motherfucking difference. 10 times out of 9, I never found Nirvana. I need a peace of mind. I'm smoking marijuana and thinking I might act like I know what I'm doing, but I don't. Crash test dummies on character, bro. Butterfly doors and a suicide note. I don't know a lot, but this I know. Listen, fix your face, don't let them see you cry. Ain't nobody perfect, but you a close tie. Why lies, white lies, blinding, colorblind. Yeah, I wanna see the city at heights. You only achieve when you on a plane. Tired of seeing the city at night. The lights are bright, but the energy change. Chasing the feeling I cannot contain. The cure behind my physical pain. A friend of mine was stricken with grief. I gave him a hug, ain't know what to say. And hey, maybe that's the way. And hey, maybe that's the way. And hey, maybe that's the way. I need a peace of mind. And hey, maybe that's the way. I might act like I know what I'm doing, but I don't. Crash test dummies on character, bro. Butterfly doors and a suicide note. I don't know a lot, but this I know. Listen, fix your face, don't let them see you cry. Ain't nobody perfect, but you a close tie. Why lies, white lies, blinding, colorblind.
Dude, this was a phenomenal track. The feels when we got into that chorus section in the later half and he talked about giving his mate a hug and everything like that. That's just... holy shit, man. Okay, so this track, number 4. I might look like I know what I'm doing, but I don't. Crash test dummies. It's such a catchy hook line, dude. Down, down, ba-da-da-da-dum, bum, bum. I know it sounds so basic, but it's such intense subject matter that I kind of hold on to that. We're still paying attention to like keeping things sort of like bouncy and having a great sense of rhythmic sort of cohesion with those bass and drum parts. It's fantastic. I think we're discussing our struggle to find happiness. We talk about getting like high and everything like that. And we want to get high enough to look down at the city like on a plane because we're down at the bottom and the lights are, there's the lights, but the vibe is different. And I think it's more sort of like saying, I want to get out of this sort of misty stuff that's almost sort of corroding me. I want to find a way to get out of the situation I'm in. I want to keep climbing. And I don't know what to do about all these situations I'm in, but I'm just going to support my mates and try and get through it the best way I can and keep pushing forward. And they talk about maybe this is the way and I need peace of mind, etc. And it's almost like it's discussing the pain that we're in physically, like psychologically, etc. Not wanting to let people see you cry. We talk about suicide notes and stuff like that as well. It's incredibly heavy stuff. And you just get the impression that this is a very sort of real personal thing for Passive that either they or family members have gone through, and it's just such a brave thing to sort of make a song about. It really does sort of like articulate or further things that have been hinted at across this EP so far. And it's almost like we've got a clear goal and direction now that despite the troubles and difficulties we've had with those and the people around us and those difficulties that they've had, we still kind of objectively, we want to get off the ground, and I like that that's where we're going with this. We accept that things aren't ideal, and we accept that we've made some mistakes and we've struggled and stuff like that, but we're still looking to move forward, but not in the way that's unrealistic. It's grounded, but we want to get out of there. So I think after that explanation, that was probably way sort of like overblown on my part. I think the actual vocals here are tremendous. The verse parts with the rapping, that the way we phrased things was exquisite. They're very comfortable across the groove of those synth pads, the bass and the drums, with like these saxophones and then the strings and all these other sort of like fun elements over top, which you get to in a moment. But just the way that we held ourselves, we again explored different sort of ways of like phrasing things, and we extrapolated in a way where you got the context near the end in that chorus section with the harmony. Then he gave us a bit more. And then he gave us a bit more in that final hook, and again using the great sort of upper lower harmonies there to add a sense of space and depth to the piece in a way that was very meaningful. Just lots of variety in regards to the actual way that it was sung and rapped, and it was a compelling listen. The track starts with this kind of slow kind of like rise of like these that kind of slower beat that almost sounds like it was kind of the vinyl player was like slowed down deliberately to sort of speed it up to like the pace it was meant to be at. And we have these interesting sort of like lower kind of vocals there, which I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about or what the context is, but there was a cool sound there in terms of Air Candy that we had here. And they continue at parts throughout the piece as well there, and there's like almost like a verbal onomatopoeic layer. There's almost like a future bassist kind of tone there with those seventh chords with those synth pads in the background there on top of the 8th and sort of 16th note groove on the kicks there with occasional triplets and stuff like that. It's just a very fresh sounding track. And I think that what allows this track to remain sort of like fresh sounding is, with the drums and percussion being relatively consistent throughout the piece, is those occasional sort of kind of vocal parts, the strings on one side and the saxophone on the other, like the saxophone solo thing that we had going on there. It was just gorgeous sounding. The actual tone of the saxophone is just so beautiful, and it's got this kind of mistiness and kind of like sexiness to it in a way. It's kind of like jazzy infusion with those seventh chord pads. It's divine. And I kind of just dig the fact that we came up from that slower element. It almost like most of this track was the speed we were wanting to do live, to communicate. It was like the EP so far was just kind of speeding up or kind of building up to this final song where we have a sense of direction and purpose and we're ready to go full speed ahead. But when we talk about what we manifested, you got to respect it. It's just great that we're sort of taking responsibility for the good things that we managed to accomplish as we kind of work our way forward, and I like that sense of positivity there. Got the track's number 6, The End. Let's do it.
When I look back at the old me, I don't recognize my face, 'cause I made a few changes I felt I had to make.
I'm still distant around strangers. I blame difference in taste. I don't need your prescription. I'm already faded, faded. Days spent thinking about the nights I've wasted. I pray heaven has a heart of patience. Lost in a world of the young and famous. Lately feeling like we living in a simulation, Lord. Who in the hell is controlling me?
Interesting question. I like some of the questions that are being asked in this.
Who in the hell is controlling me? 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 Tell them to take a break and face their own reality. Stop blaming me for everything. You know it ain't much more than this life. I ain't got much more to give. Forgive me for my intent. I intended to make amends, but impatience is a bitch. I wonder, is that what it takes to exist? I wonder, how many lives have I lived? I wonder, where is my intuition from? My heart beats to a different drum. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-dum, ba. Always had trouble being indecisive. I kept second guessing my decisions. Not for nothing, I was always hustling. Dreaded when I had to seek forgiveness. Wrongdoings weren't ever intentional. I'm too selfish to focus on y'all. Had to discover the light at the end of the tunnel by trapping myself in the dark. I got the makings of being a prodigy. I take a statement and throw it away. Beyond creation, the hottest commodity. Never relied on the money they made. You gotta feel it inside of your heart. This not a feeling that you could just fake. Practice makes perfect. You probably heard the past are pretty good at running away. Too much risk and attempting to coexist. My mental cannot be contained. My spirit is drained. I'm willing to change, but dang, man, it ain't feeling the same. Still want the diamond, still want the change. Settle for less than a fortune and fame. I don't complain, it's all in the name. Passive aggressive, the rapper addressing the process of dealing with pressure and pain. Etch a sketch in a circle of death, straight shooter, fuck how to aim. Judging the numbers on profitability, I can admit at the end of the day, I'm nothing but a little piece to the puzzle, from checkers to chess to changing the game. You're supposed to keep it the same. Here's a toast for making a change.
Is that the sound of water? I mean, I hear literally everything else, but is that... And birds? Because that was the last track titled The End from Passive the Rapper off of the 4passive Forever EP. Okay, so this final track, The End, I think is the journey that we've had throughout this entire EP to the point of the first half of the track is sort of looking back at the nights we spent doing stuff, the changes we made, and it's almost like we're not sure who is controlling us. We're not sure why we've done the things we've done. It's sort of trying to maybe do a little bit of introspection to figure out where things have gotten, how they've gotten, how they are. And it's almost like you can tell it's almost sort of like we're curious about it. And then at the end, when we start rapping there, it's almost a bit sort of more firm, like we're more grounded, like we understand now what's happened, and we're sort of realizing that we want to make changes, that we've made some mistakes in the past, we want to do things differently, we feel burnt out, but we want things to change, and we're going to just try and do our best to be who we are and the best that we can. But that it needs to be a new chapter as opposed to maybe trying to do things the way we were before, and it's simply all like a learning journey and experience. I think that it basically is a really, really good way, cheers to that. Like, it's a really good way to end an EP. In terms of the clean vocals, I really appreciate how things have been done in terms of the kind of the vulnerability, the kind of the softness of the performance, especially some of the falsetto parts in that like later half of it, where we kind of explore that. We are very gentle with ourselves in the delivery of those lines there, and there's a nice sense of harmonization with the rest of the composition, which is actually quite sort of like intricate in this one. There's a fair bit going on there. For us to then go into that rap section near the end, where we kind of are, again, that's that kind of signature confidence and sort of like accuracy with the phrasing of those lines that you can hear every word clearly. But it's like in a way that's almost like at peace with it. There's no aggression or anything like that there. It's like assertive. It's like we're being assertive about our position, discussing our journey that we've had and the goals and changes that we want to make. And we're just sort of like commiserating on it, but also looking forward to what's going to happen next. And I think that that's nicely rounded. There's almost like a meditative sort of feel to this track at 3 minutes 45 that you start and end with like the birds and that it really sort of like gentle guitar loop there with the way you arpeggiate between those chords there. It's very peaceful sounding. And it's like we're in a forest kind of contemplating our existence. And there's these wonderful synths as well at the beginning, like kind of floating around the place there. And there's development and effort added things further. And we got like kind of a swing groove to the drums. We're almost like we're sort of like slow dancing through our own thoughts processes. And then the bass comes in and the drums sort of add a sense of motion to the piece there, where it continues and sort of comes away and there's dynamic range throughout the piece. But ultimately it's just a very sort of like gentle, peaceful, with like a subtle sense of optimism to a lot of the major leanings towards those chord progressions and melodies. And there's this wonderful sort of bum, 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 little highlights of the triads existing within those progressions there from certain right-hand key parts and little synthy bits there and bits of joy and sort of air candy as well. And I just like the fact that the end structurally, you simply have passive sort of like peace out. And then you've just got that theme repeating, almost like it's going to be a consistent movement forward with an upward trajectory from now on. And you can rely on that. That's what I think the music is communicating there. Thematically, it's a nice sort of major leaning ending to it with a lot of really sort of like pretty sounding instruments there that offer a sense of glow and dare I say it's sort of like a cautious like happiness. It's a really nice sounding piece there. There's no harsh edges or roughness or anything like that. It's it's a fantastic. It's a really unexpected ending, I suppose, there. But I kind of like the way that we took a turn for the better, in terms of like the actual like tone of it. The quality across the CP has been very good. I just more meant, especially some of the heavier stuff we discussed on last track. I wasn't sure how this ending song was going to turn out in regards to the progressions or key signatures or stuff. But it was nice. It was really good. And then production-wise, I just feel like this is just... I didn't really have anything to say about the previous track production-wise because it was consistent with a lot of the other ones. Here, it's the absolute same. I just like the fact that we didn't sort of like oversaturate the falsettos, some of the higher voicings we had with the clean parts there. I just like the fact that they were able to sort of like sail through. Well done. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of the CP from an excellent passive, the rapper, titled 4passive Forever. Now, I've spoken about each of these tracks individually, so these are going to be my sort of like overall comments on the album. I think that this EP was talking about Passive's journey as an adult, how they were as a kid, how they've grown up, the people around them, how they interact, how they've sort of like, how Passive is sort of dealing with relationships and like sort of like getting high and like finding ways to sort of cope with how things are going in their life, but also trying to sort of like focus on the music, accepting their journey as a musician, looking at supporting people around them, sort of like maybe like some mental health or physical health issues and stuff like that as well. The fact that our bodies are not as bulletproof as we think they are, like losing people potentially as well, which, you know, clearly it's just, there's a lot of heavy stuff in it. But I think the last track there, we almost find a resolution to all this and a pathway forward in a way that's grounded and incredibly mature. It's just really positive. So I think there's a really satisfying journey through the CP. Vocally, we have a mixture. Like we had like a lady singing at the start, which was really cool, and before we begin, and then we had the male vocals there with some sung parts. The cleans are great with a bit of tuning there, very sort of like stylistically appropriate for the genre, sort of hip hop and kind of like rap stuff, but not overdone and overblown. It still sounded grounded and authentic. You also had some really pretty sort of clean parts, occasional falsettos, but the melodies usually matched really well with the themes and backing progressions and stuff. The rapped parts there was fantastic. I loved the quality of the actual performance there, how tight we were, how articulate and sort of like careful with the wordplay, the clarity of the words, the variation of the different rhythms of the different lines and phrasings within those stanzas, and the fact that we also had interesting sort of like harmonized sort of like vocals, like 3 sort of tier 1s in certain parts there. We had some overdubs going in on various sides as well. Lots of stuff in regards to the way we've sung or rapped or anything. Lots of points of interest within this, especially as they are typically the focal point in this kind of music. It was very well done. Structurally, these tracks were between 2 and 4 minutes. That's a sweet spot for music production, like songwriting, in my opinion. Less than 2 minutes, you might miss out on some important context. More than 4 minutes, you've really got to be careful with the theme that you put forward, that is going to be fresh enough and that there's going to be enough instrumental development or vocal development or variety compositionally in order to make that last. And I think here, every single one of these tracks they nailed it. Not one track was the same. There were all these different ideas. One track had like a verse and then a chorus. Another one was more sort of like verse chorus oriented. The other had like the male and female's perspective there. One song had just like a slow kind of like a violin, like the song speeding up with a slower beat. Oh, we're up to speed now. Boom. We had like the last track, which was a longer one with like different sort of like loop parts there with sort of different sung and sort of rap parts there. Different, like lots of different ideas instrumentally. One track had like saxophone. Like there were all these different instruments, man. There were lots of, there were specifically guitar oriented parts. Like with Before We Begin, where it was guitar mostly and then bass and drums there. And it was just like a sometimes thing. Other times we came in immediately with the drums very sort of authoritative on the beat there, with the bass sort of providing the sense of phrasing below. We had some interesting key melodies and some piano parts, but we were very sort of like rhythm oriented there, and the extra groove of it was fantastic. Other tracks, we simply allowed ourselves to just sit there and enjoy the birds and the water and those sort of foliage elements there, in combination with the guitars and the keys and the pianos and all these other interesting parts of drums and bass. We had a wide variety of different instrumental makes up for these. Again, my specific comments per track are with their own sort of mini conclusions after each. But I feel like everything that was included in here made sense. There was some sort of like onomatopoeic kind of all kind of like vocal parts that were down-tuned or filtered that were an interesting sort of like rhythmic instrumental layer as well. And I'm not entirely sure how they applied to it, but I don't dislike them. It was just a different thing. I haven't really heard much, but I kind of dig that there was something. We had like a lot of this was really special. I think part of it was also the polish with like the vinyl crackle on certain tracks. Like I think track number 3, if I'm not mistaken, which was 4. Some of them anyways, we had almost like, it was like a retrospective kind of vintage, a look back at our, like how things used to be and how they are now. And it's just, it kind of grounds it. I've said grounds a lot. It kind of makes you think of the olden days, like when you were young there, just as a default thing. It helps you to get stuck into Pastor's world and what they're discussing. Thematically, like we had a mixture of different extension chords. Like each track had a separate theme. Sorry for booping the microphone there. Each track had a separate theme there, whether it was major or minor, or there was extended chords and harmonies and stuff like that. We typically had 2 to 3 different bass lines. The drums varied. The instrumental makeups varied. Each song had an appropriate theme that I could kind of relate to what was going on there, and I thought that they sounded great. My personal favorite, I think, was track number 4. I just love the way things were polished there. The freshness of some of those parts is really sick. And I like the fact that some themes sounded like they were unresolved, almost like they matched with what the vocals were about, where we were sort of seeming like we had more stuff to do. It's those little subtle decisions that make something truly special. And I think just in terms of the actual studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering, all the vocal takes came through clearly. I like the tuning on them. I like the clear parts. I like the rap components there. We understood how to treat things to suit the mood and to keep them sort of precise in the mix. We had interesting sort of like filtering and sort of like reverb tails and delays and parts. Some of the instruments, such as the drums in Before We Begin, with these massive sort of like tails, made them seem very distant, like we were alone in a room there. But the untreated sort of like lo-fi-ish kind of raw tone of some of the guitar parts made them seem sort of more real and down to earth and grounded. I even appreciate a little bit sort of like hum you can hear in some of those channels, like you can hear a person. It's just recorded. It's just putting their heart out on tape. Things were surrounding you in a stereo field, like with the different vocal takes, the way they kind of panned around the place and kind of like overshot or were together. There were no weird resonances in the frequency spectrum, like highs to lows, things were niched well. There was dynamic range to this. Sometimes you just had vocals, sometimes things went down. There was automation of the volumes at certain parts, so tracks went down at the end. You just had life, and it was vivacious, and it's just awesome. And it was nice and loud without pumping, to the bus compression and limiting was awesome. And it's just, I feel like I've said a lot of really positive things about this EP, but they're genuine. I like hearing music that is stimulating, and I know that seems very basic, but It's not always a given. And I like listening to EPs from musicians that know what they're doing. And I feel at this point, after having listened to Passive's music for a while now, when I listen to a track from them, I will, even if it's like uncomfortable content that it makes me feel like sad or like it's not positive feelings, I will nonetheless appreciate the experience because I know that I'm in safe hands. They know what they're doing. And it's been a pleasure to review the EP from Next Name Passive, the rapper titled 4passive Forever. And hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and SoundCloud page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.